afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Eric Atkinson, Junior Vice Commander of Lincoln Cushing Camp No. 2, Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War. Cordial greetings and warm thanks to all of you for making the trek from far and near, from all points of the compass and what could have been some potentially bad weather. And thank you for bearing with us as we adapted to the weather and moved our ceremony indoors. I use the term loosely. We're honored to have you all here as part of this special occasion. Today, the 30th of May, is the date that General John A. Logan, Commander-in-Chief of the Grand Army of the Republic, set aside in 1868 to honor the Union war dead. In fact, it was exactly 150 years ago today that the first Decoration Day ceremony was held at Arlington National Cemetery. And it was in 1973 that this amphitheater began holding those ceremonies. The amphitheater had been recently constructed, so the first decoration, 1873. Did I say 19? Oh boy, it's been a long day. In 1873, the first of those ceremonies was held here in this amphitheater. Today we honor not just those who perished defending the Union during the Civil War, but all the men and women who died in our nation's wars in defense of our country, and to ensure, in President Lincoln's words, a new birth of freedom for all. I want to express my sincere thanks to the Secretary of the Army, the Executive Director of Army National Military Cemeteries, and the staff of Arlington National Cemetery for allowing us to continue this hallowed tradition here on the same spot that our forefathers paid tribute to their fallen comrades in blue. I also want to thank our guests on the dais, Ken Surface, who portrays General Grant, and the heads of all the Allied orders of the Grand Army of the Republic, and members of other patriotic and hereditary organizations. The President's own U.S. Marine Band Brass Quintet, under the direction today of Gunnery Sergeant Brian Turnmeyer, is providing musical support for our ceremony. I thank the ensemble for its participation. Finally, I want to thank the Color Guard from the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, for being a part of today's ceremony. As a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel myself, it always warms my heart to see soldiers looking so sharp and ready. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's Master of Ceremonies, Senior Vice Commander Charles Hoover Bobino of Lincoln Cushing Camp No. 2, Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War, who will introduce our guests today.
Would the honored guests please rise when I call your name? And would all participants please withhold your applause until I have finished the introduction. Representing the Allied Orders of the GAR are Ms. Michelle Colburn, National President of the Women's Relief Corps, Ms. Carolyn Augusto, National President of the Ladies of the Grand Army of the Republic, Ms. Karen Cleveland, National President, Daughters of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, 1861 to 1865, Ms. Ramona Greenwald, National President, Auxiliary to the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, Mr. Mark Day, Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, Mr. W. Farron Taylor, Commander, Department of the Chesapeake, Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War. Representing the Sons of the Veterans Reserve, the ceremonial uniform component of the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, is the past Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, retired Colonel Andrew Martin Johnson. Representing other Civil War patriotic orders, Mr. Jeffrey Burton of the Military Order of the Loyal Legion of the United States, which was founded in April of 1865. Commander John Moore of the D.C. Commandery, Military Order of the Loyal Legion of the United States. National President Ellen Higgins of the Dames of the Loyal Legion of the United States, and Captain J. James Lawrence Rojek of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, or the Old Guard, and President of the Society of the Army of the Tennessee. And finally, I am pleased to introduce United States Navy Captain Retired Ed Gamp, President of the 23rd United States Colored Troops Regiment, Spotsylvania, Virginia. Also, Gunnery Sergeant Ken Surface, United States Marine Corps retired, portraying Lieutenant General Ulysses S. Grant. Honored ladies and gentlemen, let us begin the ceremonies. Please stand for the presentation of our national colors and the playing of the national anthem. A reminder, since 2008, all service members not in uniform and all veterans are authorized to render the military salute when the national anthem is played. Color Guard, host the colors.
Colors, forward, forward. Colors, halt. Colors, present, halt. Colors, right shoulder, forward. Colors, colors turn, forward.
Please be seated. My pleasure, distinct honor, at this time to introduce Camp Commander Stephen Bowling of the Camp Commander of the Lincoln Cushing Camp Number 2. Commander Bowling was elected as the 42nd Commander of the Lincoln Cushing Camp Number 2, Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War in the National Capital Region. Commander Bowling was born and raised in Wisconsin. He joined the United States Navy at age 18 and served 21 years in the submarine force, where he was responsible for the safe navigation of his ships. He retired as a senior chief quartermaster, submarines. He now works for the Navy as a civilian, helping to maintain the fleet. Camp Commander Bowling.
Brothers and sons of Union veterans of the Civil War and friends, we assemble once more to pay to our forefathers our tribute of love and respect, and within these sacred bounds to pledge anew our fealty to their memory and the principles for which they fought. With bowed heads, solemn tread, and voices hushed, we meet to remind our people their duty to soldiers and sailors who wore the blue, the flag for which they fought, to the country for which they died, and that is for us to keep green the memories of the heroic service and unselfish sacrifice. May we fully realize the sanctity of the place and hour. May our conduct give assurance of the sincerity of our purpose and our earnest appreciation of the duties and responsibilities devolved upon us as sons of the Union veterans of the Civil War. Our chaplain, Brother John Higgins, will invoke the divine blessing. Please stand.
Supreme ruler of the universe, God of battles,
day and this hour for this blessed privilege of meeting here as sons of soldiers, sailors, and Marines, to honor to our nation's dead. We thank you that in the day of trouble and an hour of danger, that you in your infinite wisdom raised up men who were ready to do battle, if need be to die that this country might be preserved. Grant us, we beseech thee, the continuance of your watchful care. Grant your blessing upon these solemn ceremonies, consecrated as they are to the memory of the brave and loyal hearts that dared to stand for the right, did not fear to bare their breasts to the storm of steel in defense of liberty, a united country, and the brotherhood of man. May we fully realize the sanctity of our confidence, the sincerity of our purpose, and our earnest dedication, the duties and responsibilities involved upon us as sons of human veterans of the Civil War, sisters of Allied orders, and members of patriotic organizations. Bless our country. Bless it, preserve its integrity, prosper our order. Make it, we pray you, an instrument of your hands, the great glory of our country. And at last gather us all with thee in the great camp of eternity. Hear and answer, we beseech thee. Amen.
Please remain standing for Hail Columbia, our national air until 1931, when the Star-Spangled Banner was so designated. Hail Columbia served as the national anthem during the days of the Grand Army of the Republic. The Grand Army of the Republic established Decoration Day in 1868. Here to officially post the GAR's order is past Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, retired Colonel Andrew Martin Johnson.
I'm delighted to be here once again in this wonderful venue, especially on the 170th anniversary. Please take your seats. Headquarters, Grand Army of the Republic, General Order Number 11, Washington, D.C., on the 5th of May, 1868. The 30th of May, 1868, is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet churchyard in the land. In this observance, no form or ceremony is prescribed. The hosts and comrades will, in their own way, arrange such fitting services in testimonials of respect as circumstances may permit. We are organized, comrades, as our regulations tell us, for the purpose, among other things, of preserving and strengthening those kind and fraternal feelings which have bound together the soldiers, sailors, and Marines who united to suppress the late rebellion. What can aid more to assure this result than cherishing tenderly the memory of our heroic dead, who made their breasts a barricade between our country and its foes. Their soldier lives were the reveille of freedom to a race in chains, and their deaths the tattoo of rebellious tyranny and arms. We should guard their graves with sacred vigilance. All of the consecrated wealth and taste of the nation can add to their adornment and security is but a fitting tribute to the memory of her slain defenders. Let no wanton foot tread rudely on such hallowed ground. Let pleasant paths invite the coming and going of reverent visitors and fond mourners. Let no vandalism or avarice or neglect, no ravages of time testify to the present or to the coming generation that we have forgotten as a people the cost of a free and undivided republic. If other eyes grow dull, other hands slack, and other hearts cold, in this solemn trust, ours shall keep it well as long as the light and warmth of life remains in us. Let us then, at the time appointed, gather around our sacred remains and garland the passionless mounds above them with the choicest flowers of springtime. Let us raise above them the dear old flag they saved from dishonor. Let us in this solemn presence do our pledges, aid and assist those whom they have left among us. A sacred charge upon the nation's gratitude, the soldiers and sailors, widows and orphans. It is the purpose of the Commander-in-Chief to inaugurate this observance with the hope that it will be kept up from year to year while a survivor of the war remains to honor the memory of his departed comrades. He earnestly desires the public press to call attention to this order and to lend its friendly aid in bringing it to the notice of comrades in all parts of the country in time for simultaneous compliance therewith. Department commanders will use every effort to make this order effective. By order of John A. Logan, Commander-in-Chief, Sons of Youth, Grand Army of the Republic. Thank you.
Our first guest speaker today is United States Navy Captain retired Ed Gant, President of the 23rd United States Colored Troop Regiment. President Gant enlisted in the United States Army in 1969. He spent most of the next 3 years as a helicopter crew member, including a 12-month tour in South Vietnam as a helicopter door gunner and crew chief. Captain Gant graduated from Howard University in 1977 and attended the Naval Aviation Officer Candidate School in Pensacola, Florida. He was awarded his Naval Flight Officer Wings of Gold in 1978 and reported to Naval Air Station Oceana, Virginia for training in the F-14A Tomcat. He subsequently accumulated over 2,000 hours in the F-14 while serving with operational fighter squadrons from the decks of the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, USS Saratoga, USS Forrestal, and USS Carl Vinson. These assignments took him from the Mediterranean Sea, the Indian Ocean, the Persian Gulf, and the Pacific Ocean. His command tours include Fighter Squadron 31 at NAS Miramar, flying the F-14D Super Tomcat and the Navy Recruit Training Command Great Lakes, and the Navy's only boot camp. Since 2014, Captain Gant has been a member of the 23rd Regiment, United States Colored Troops, representing one of the nearly 200,000 African Americans who served in uniform during the Civil War. He currently serves as president of the 23rd Regiment, headquartered in Spotsylvania, Virginia. Captain Gant.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, sir. And let me say thank you to Commander Bowling for including the 23rd Regiment of U.S. Colored Troops. And greetings, ladies. It's an honor to share the platform with you. General, you may not know that the 23rd Regiment was formed in October 1863, right down the hill. We were formed at a place called Camp Casey, near where the Pentagon is today. And by the spring of 1864, we were the first U.S. Colored Troop Regiment to be engaged with Robert E. Lee's forces of Northern Virginia. That happened in the Chancellorsville area. From the spring of 64 on through the spring of 1865, we went from the Battle of the Wilderness down through Petersburg and the siege and the Battle of the Crater, on into Richmond in early April of 1865, and then on to Appomattox. We were just one of 142 United States Colored Troop infantry regiments. There were another 14 artillery regiments and another 7 cavalry regiments. Altogether, we made up 10% of the U.S. Army, the Union Army at the time. The thing that sets the U.S. Colored Troops apart was that they had a vested interest in the outcome of that war. They were fighting for something called freedom, which they really didn't understand what it was. Most of the warriors, and there were some women who dressed as men and fought with U.S. Colored Troops. U.S. Colored Troops had been formed from as far south and southwest as Louisiana, as far west as Kansas, and all of the states over here in the east and the northeast. Why were they formed? Because they had that vested interest. They knew that if it turned out one way, that freedom would be denied. If it turned out the other way, then maybe this thing called freedom would happen. What it was exactly, they weren't sure, but they did have a pretty good feel that it was better than what they had experienced the year before. So the 200,000 signed up. In addition to the 10% of the U.S. Army, we also made up 1/4 of the U.S. Navy at the time. And we take pride in making sure that the history of the contribution of U.S. Colored Troops and African Americans in the Navy doesn't get pushed aside as we tell the story of the preservation of the Union during those dark years from 1861 to 1865. And if you listen really closely, you can probably hear the voices of some of my comrades who were in training right down the hill at Camp Casey in the fall of 1863. It takes a special ear to hear that, but I feel it. So thank you very much for inviting us, and we look forward to continued interaction. Thank you, sir.
Our second guest speaker today is, we are honored by his presence. It's none other than Commanding General of the United States Army, Lieutenant General Ulysses S. Grant. Sir.
Good afternoon, thank you. It is indeed an honor to be here, and it was noted earlier that the Army did most of the heavy fighting throughout the late war to end the rebellion. It needs to be noted, too, how important the Navy was and those colored troops, too. My own experience with the colored troops was at Milliken's Bend at the start of the campaign to take Vicksburg, which leads me to recognize, too, that without the United States Navy and the United States Marines, we would not have won the war, so we must honor them as well. So outside of the persona, my heart belongs over here as well, because I am a retired bandsman this outstanding. So can we take a moment to say thank you? Back into work. I would like to share a few words. Comrades and other devoted Americans, always with sorrow and deepest respect do we meet each month of May to honor all those who have fallen to preserve the Republic. Among the many and variously honored American dead here are others, foreign to our citizenship, but who supported the same notions of freedom and liberty as any native son of the Stars and Stripes. They rest here, having earned their place, while sharing in the burdens of freedom-loving Americans also here for their eternal rest, who gave of their lives so that the Republic would be sustained. In my opinion, there is no greater hallowed ground in our nation other than this place. And to be here and share in this ceremony to remember all who have fallen in the name of freedom's causes is a tremendous honor and privilege. Being a veteran myself, after long years of sacrifice and service, all we who wore the nation's uniform are only all too familiar with, it is only natural to pause on this day to reflect on the extreme devotion of those honored dead who rest among these hills. When we stood shoulder to shoulder under the flag to protect home and country, we never imagined a day that we might be called again, but stand ready should we be called for such a thing. We all know the cost to preserve the Union, and surely know some who paid with the dearest blood of our families and comrades. It is for us then to remember their sacrifices and never allow their honorable service to be tarnished or forgotten. It is proper and appropriate to pause each year to meet with old comrades in arms and to live over again in memory the trials and hardships of those days in service to our Republic. Hardships imposed for the preservation and perpetuation of our free institutions should never be taken for granted, and the memory of all those who gave their final measure of devotion should forever be honored each year. We believe then, and believe now, that we had a good government worth fighting for and, if need be, dying for. How many of our comrades of those days paid the latter price for our preserved Union? Let their heroism and sacrifice be evergreen and in our memory. Let not the results of their sacrifices be destroyed. The Union and the free institutions for which they fell should be held more dear for their sacrifices. God bless them, their families, and the United States of America. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Jeffrey Burton, standing in for the Commander-in-Chief of the Military Order of the Loyal Legion of the United States, Eric Rojo. Mollis, as it's also known, is the first of the hereditary and patriotic societies that was founded following the Civil War. Commander-in-Chief Rojo sends his regrets that he could not be here with us this evening. Mr. Burton is a past Commander-in-Chief of Mollis. He is also a member of the Brady Camp Sons of the Union Veterans. In recent years, he has served on the advisory committee for the Virginia Civil War Sesquicentennial Commission and as a member of the Commonwealth's Lincoln Bicentennial Committee. Mr. Burton is also active with the Friends of Shockoe Hill Cemetery. That Richmond Cemetery is best known as the resting place of Chief Justice John Marshall and Union Spy Master Elizabeth Van Lew. The group is responsible for placing markers at more than 200 previously unmarked Confederate and other soldier graves. Mr. Burton.
Thank you all very much. I do indeed bring greetings on behalf of the Loyal Legion and our Commander-in-Chief, Eric Rojo, who could not be here today. I hope now that you will suffer me to deliver a few remarks in his stead. In preparing for this, I've thought back to the times that I've had the honor and privilege of speaking at various Memorial Day events in different places, including here over a couple of years. And looking at kind of thinking back as to what I talked about, there was one common theme, one thread, which is the essence of why and how we remember. The answer to why perhaps seems simple enough. It's because it's what we do. It's what we're supposed to do. It's of course not that simple. Many of our fellow citizens don't remember. They know or care too little about our history and our war dead. For them, why and how are essentially meaningless terms. Some others throw out a vague passing thought and leave it at that. Lives are busy, demands are many. It's tough to make the effort. And it does require effort. It does require work, a certain mental discipline to recall sacrifice, to remember the dead, to understand why we have a memorial day, and how it is appropriate to mark it. Remembrance is a process too many of us don't undertake. I believe it is, in fact, a high duty, an obligation, if you will, as citizens and comrades to remember. One talk I gave not long ago, I quoted Drew Gilpin Faust, whose book, This Republic of Suffering, Death and the American Civil War, talks about how the sheer toll of that war was meaningful. The nation's value and importance, she wrote, was both derived from and proved by the human price paid for its survival. National cemeteries, pensions, and records that preserved names and identities involved a dramatically new understanding of the relationship of citizen and state. Soldiers were not simply cogs in a machinery of increasingly industrialized warfare. Citizens were selves, bodies and names that lived beyond their own deaths, individuals who were the literal lifeblood of their nation. Faust, I think, is absolutely correct. American citizens had remembered the dead of earlier wars, but the Civil War led to a fundamental change in the nature, how and why they remembered that for some of our fellow citizens, at least, continues to the present day. I recall one particular individual, John Hautel III, West Point class of 1964, Rhodes Scholar, decorated for valor in Vietnam, where in 1970 he was killed in action. The year before, he'd sent his wife a letter containing within it another sealed envelope marked to be opened in the event of my death. In that letter, he wrote, "I deny that I died for anything, not my country, not my army, not my fellow man. I lived for these things, and the manner in which I chose to do it involved a very real chance that I would die. My love for West Point and the Army was great enough for me to accept this possibility as part of a price that must be paid for things of great value." In a distilled form, that may be the answer to why we remember. We too sense that we are all part of a thing of great value, a thing that requires courage and sacrifice to maintain, to improve, and events like this focus our commitment. As for how, well, possibilities are many. Let this day, in this place, be one of many instances in the coming year when we consciously and happily fulfill our duty, our obligations as citizens. We remember. Thank you for coming.
Our next speaker is the commander of the Department of the Chesapeake of the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, Brother W. Farron Taylor. The Department of the Chesapeake includes Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and the District of Columbia. Brother Taylor also serves as Chief of Staff to the Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War. Brother Taylor is a past commander of Baltimore's James A. Garfield Camp No. 1 and has served as the aide-de-camp for the Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War. Professionally, Brother Taylor retired in 2007 after a 28-year career in law enforcement as Maryland's Deputy State Fire Marshal. Department Commander.
Thank you, Brother Bugino. To the national officers of the Allied Orders of the Grand Army of the Republic, distinguished representatives of our civic and patriotic organizations and societies, Lieutenant General Grant, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am oppressed with a sense of the impropriety of uttering words on this occasion. If silence is ever golden, it must be here, beside the graves of 15,000 men whose lives were more significant than speech and whose death was a poem, the music of which can never be sung. We do not know one promise these men made, one pledge they gave, one word they spoke. But we do know they summed up and perfected, by one supreme act, the highest virtues of men and citizens. For love of country, they accepted death, and thus resolved all doubts, and made immortal their patriotism and their virtue. These stirring words about common men who did uncommon things for the Union are just a small segment of the oration given on this very day in May of 1868 by then Congressman James A. Garfield, just a brief walk from here at the front of Arlington House. The gathering of over 5,000 people on that first Memorial Day was an answer to the clarion call of the Grand Army of the Republic's Commander-in-Chief, John A. Logan's General Order Number 11, summoning a nation to assemble on May 30th to, in part, adorn the graves and venerate the fallen heroes who died in the suppression of the late rebellion. Now, while our numbers today fall somewhat short of that assembled throng exactly 150 years ago today, our enthusiasm, our ardor, our devotion to the cause of honoring the fallen burns brightly in the hearts of a grateful nation. As we reflect on the words of Garfield and Logan, let us honor the sacrifice of the thousands and thousands and thousands of fallen heroes, most of whom were known only to their families and neighbors. Let us extol those common men who answered the call of union and freedom. Let us thank them. Let us remember them. Common men who did uncommon things.
The 5 Allied Orders of the Grand Army of the Republic include 4 women's groups: the Ladies of the Grand Army of the Republic, the National Women's Relief Corps, the Auxiliary to the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, and the Daughters of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. Each year, one of the women's groups presents a tribute to the nation's war dead at this ceremony. The original tribute was a poem by Dr. E.A. Duncan, presented by Dr. Duncan at this very ceremony on May 30th, 1873, with President and Mrs. Grant in attendance. This year, the honor goes to the Women's Relief Corps. It is my pleasure to introduce Sister Michelle Colburn, National President of the Women's Relief Corps, who will present an excerpt from Dr. Duncan's poem on behalf of the 4 ladies groups of the Allied Orders. Ms. Colburn has been a member of the Women's Relief Corps since 2007. She is currently serving her 2nd term as WRC National President. Ms. Colburn has volunteered with the Full Circle Home program, which works with recently deployed soldiers to provide Christmas gifts to their significant others left at home. She has assembled over 15,000 tags for those gifts. She is also the proud mother of 2 daughters and a son. Her son accompanies her on her travels. Her passion is working with children of all ages, and she enjoys her career as a teacher.
Another fleeting year on the way of time's tide, as it goes rushing so restlessly fast, has far away drifted as the other years drift, and many dear comrades far on its broad billow have passed out from view as we watch on the shore. Many who met us in the same sacred spot just 12 months ago, but who'll need us no more. Some have died in their homes, some have sunk in the sea, and some have met death on the battlefield sands, like the heroes for whom our flag is now draped, who fell in fullness, in full harness, in the field, in the camp, on the ocean they died, and we mournfully mark as we reckon each year how the arrows of death have been thinning our ranks, and how lessened our number each time we meet here. But most happy are those who, after life's fever, can lay down their burden as if taking their rest, while knowing that they leave a proud record behind them. and a name that will ever be cherished as blessed, like those we have gathered from fields of their glory, and they have tenderly laid precious treasures to keep, where we may come yearly with offerings memorial, and previously lay them where they peacefully sleep. Long centuries after our bones have moldered and mixed with dust of our own far lands, there still will be those who will come, yearly pilgrims, to deck the mounds sacred with spring's richest garlands, thus showing to all ages those who have died in defense of their country on war's glory plain, filled a proud mission, meet fate with that was noble, a death that was glorious, and lived not in vain.
The President's own United States Marine Band Brass Quintet will now play Ashokan Farewell by J. Upton. Brother Mark Day, Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War. Commander-in-Chief Day was elected Commander-in-Chief on August 12, 2017 in Lansing, Michigan at the 136th National Encampment of the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War. Originally a native of New York, in 1971 he enlisted in the U.S. Navy and began a career that spanned almost 24 years. He served as an operations specialist on the USS Leahy CG-16, USS Nassau LHA-4, and USS Wisconsin BB-64. He also served as an instructor and recruiter during the periods of shore duty. His career took him to many places in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Some of his more notable deployments were the 1975 Naval Exchange which was part of détente between the Soviet Union and the United States, operations off the coast of Lebanon, and the first Persian Gulf War, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. He completed his active duty as the Master Chief for the Combat Systems Training Department at Fleet Combat Training Center, Atlantic, Dam Neck, Virginia, and retired from the service in 1995. Following his retirement from the Navy, Commander-in-Chief Day quickly began a second career in public education in Virginia's Bedford County public school system in 1995. He joined the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain Camp 20 at Roanoke, Virginia in 1997, and in 2005 transferred to the Taylor Wilson Camp 10 at Lynchburg, Virginia, where he is a charter member. He has served in his as his camp's patriotic instructor, junior vice commander, senior vice commander, and camp commander. His department's patriotic instructor, junior vice commander, senior vice commander, and department commander, and at the national level as a member of the Americanism Committee, chairman of the Promotions and Marketing Committee, chairman of the Programs and Policies Committee, junior vice commander-in-chief, senior vice commander-in-chief, and now currently as commander-in-chief. Commander-in-Chief Day is active in the field of history, education, and preservation. He has served as president of his local Civil War Roundtable and on Lynchburg's Civil War Sesquicentennial Committee from 2010 through 2015. He portrays General E.O.C. Ord in the Appomattox National Military Park Visitor Center film With Malice Toward None, and portrayed Colonel Charles Carpine in the Chesapeake Emmy Award-winning documentary film Hunter's Raid for the Battle of Lynchburg. The Commander-in-Chief is also active in local civic and heritage organizations such as the Sons of the American Revolution, Masons, Royal Arch, and Knights Templar. It is our pleasure to welcome Commander-in-Chief Day.
Well, the very first thing I want to say is that this is a tough act to follow. These folks who have spoken before me have, with great eloquence, covered most of the points I intended to cover. So I'm going to break from what my prepared remarks and speak from the heart. I'd like everyone to look around. Understand where you are. I have spent 2 days. I was here all day Monday, had the privilege of placing a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns, and came back today again because this place has a pull. It has a force. It has a memory, and that pulls you to it. So look around us. The honored dead that fill the fields all the way down to the road. General Logan said we were to keep their memory green. And he doesn't mean green like the green you see here. He means alive. To be green is to be alive. The symbol of Christmas is a Christmas tree. It's an evergreen. It's evergreen. We are here to keep the memory of all of these men and women, black, white, Hispanic, whatever. We're here today to pay honor to them and to keep their memory green, alive in our hearts and in the minds of the people of this country. It's our duty, our task, to step out of the darkness and speak the voice that these people don't have to speak with. You know, Shakespeare, as a teacher, I love Shakespeare. And there's a wonderful scene in Hamlet where he talks with the skull. And what does he say? Alas, poor York, I knew him well. But what does the skull represent? It represents silence. The skull can't speak. Later in that same play, At the very end, he says to Horatio, you cannot take your life, you must speak for me. I will be gone. You must speak for me. We have that same tasking. We are directed to do that same thing. We are to speak for these men to make sure that they're never forgotten, to make sure that their memory is kept green. Now, I apologize for stepping off of my prepared remarks, but after listening to them, that's what was on my heart, and that's what I wanted to say. I would urge each of you to follow General Logan's order, to read General Logan's order, and to keep it always in your mind and in your heart. We are I used to haul Marines around. I have a friend who died at Beirut. It's very important that we do this. So, if I could ask you to do only one thing today, I would ask you to do what I've just directed. That you would step out of the shadows and be their voice. So that they are never, ever forgotten. Because my mother told me once, as long as a person's name is remembered, they live. But if their name is not remembered, then they have died twice. So remember them, remember all of them every day. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to contemplate and honor the nation's war dead. At this sacred place, our forefathers in the Grand Army of the Republic from 1893 to 1923 always included at least one solemn piece of music in their ceremonies in order to fix their minds on the departed and to contemplate their own future. This year we have chosen the beloved hymn, Eternal Father, Strong to Save. The original poem was written by William Whiting in 1860. John Bacchus Dykes composed the hymn Melita, which is the familiar music used for Eternal Father. We now ask the U.S. Marine Band Quintet to perform Eternal Father. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise and sing the Battle Hymn of the Republic, a tribute to our nation's heroes. The Marine Band, the U.S. Marine Band Brass Quintet will accompany our singing. Ruffles for the Dead, and then taps will follow the Battle of Kings. And please remain standing for the concluding prayer and final musical selection.
Coming of the Lord, He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He is loosed the hateful lightning of His terrible sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, His truth is marching
destinies of countries and of men. The silent camping ground of the dead, we have come before you, seeking your blessings as we honor the memories of the fallen, resting here in their eternal bivouac. Grant that we ever keep this day, never let this place or their memories be forgotten. May the fallen dead from all our nations' wars, from the revolution to the ongoing war on terror, be always in our prayer and thoughts, and that the tables of love and memory be forever preserved. We hope that it will be thy will, that we may all be filled before thy throne. And through thy name is thy praise, now and forever. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending our Grand Army of the Republic Decoration Day ceremony. will now place wreaths